Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.
The Sparkfile podcast may contain profanity and other adult content.
Please use your discretion.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Welcome to the Spark File, where we believe that everyone is creative, but smart creative people don't go it alone.
I'm Laura Camion.
And I'm Susan Blackwell. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome, friend. But you may be asking yourself, what exactly is a Spark File? Where do I get one? What do I file in it? These are such good questions, and we actually do have answers.
We certainly do. A Spark File is a place where you consistently collect all your inspirations and fascinations. And if you're like us and making stuff all the time, you know that sometimes the wellspring of inspiration can run a little dry. We're here to refill it.
We are on the lookout for fresh ideas, images, and inspiration that spark creativity and pique curiosity, things that inspire us to get up off of our asses and make things like this podcast.
Or holistic, dynamic designs that illuminate a story and light up an audience.
Or bold, no-holds-barred lighting that transforms comedians into rock stars.
Or bold, no-holds-barred lighting that transforms rock stars into gods.
On today's Makersode, we're going to talk with someone who, we're not joking about this, truly sparks us.
Truly fucking sparks us. And that someone is Marc Janowitz. Marc, welcome to the Spark File!
Marc, get in here.
Hearing you, I feel sparked. I feel so inspired just hearing you guys do the inspiration. I thought, who's this person they're talking about?
It's you son of a bitch.
It's you. It's Marc fucking Janowitz.
We're so excited to get this chance to reconnect and to talk with you, Marc.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. We've been working on trying to get a date for a long time now.
You're the busiest man in show business, Marc Janowitz.
You really, really are. And we should probably say fair warning to everyone. Like, this is probably going to be part interview and part friend reunion because we have so much to catch up on. We're very excited. So for those who don't know Marc, can we just say he is an extraordinary lighting designer. He is also a fantastic human being, and we're both very proud to call him friend.
All of this is true. Marc, we're going to start with the basics. Where are you right now? And how are you right now for reals?
I am in my design studio in Pleasantville, New York, which is in Westchester County.
Fancy.
It's also kind of like an office, but I like calling it a design studio. It makes it feel a little bit more inspiring.
Very creative.
And how am I? I'm feeling pretty good at this moment. I have to say, yeah. I had a great hike in the woods today in Burnham Park.
Whoa!
Which is a county park, kind of not far from where my office is. I tried some new trails, and felt like it's what I needed to do to get ready for this podcast. Clear my mind, and be inspired.
I'm very sparked by that because you are, no joke, you are incredibly busy, very sought after professionally. I feel like you are always on the go, on planes, lighting things, shooting things, designing things. And I'm very impressed that you carved out that time to go for that hike. Well done.
Carving out time is a big, wherever you can find it, you need it. And it's something that I've heard you both speak about on this podcast. And it really rang true to something that had already been sort of changing in my life and in my world, where I realized that if you're just busy, go all the time, and you don't take any time you can, even if it's just a few minutes, to refill, so to speak, then you run out of fuel.
Yes.
Can I ask you about that? Going rogue, Laura Camion. You are a lighting designer.
Lighting and production designer.
Let's get it straight.
Yes, I do production design when it's incorporated into lighting. But sorry, I didn't mean to get into your stream of thought.
This is actually very relevant to this question. So carving out this time that we're talking about is partially about sort of rest, but it's also about refilling your tank, refilling your kindling box with images and inspiration, as we talk about in the intro to this podcast. And I'm wondering, as you take that walk in the woods, as you do those things to refill, are you looking at things for real, like consciously looking at things as like when you see the light filtering through the trees, when you see the tree, are you thinking about how that might play in your work?
Yes, and more.
Oh, wow. Tell us the more.
Well, so the first part, so lighting through the trees, I feel like that inspiration, you don't even need to really look for that, right? That to me, I feel like that's already internalized to me in how I think about lighting and form and drama and stories and pictures. That doesn't, I'll still stop for any sunset, and I'll still be just completely in awe of seeing a streaming light. Today's a gray, cloudy day, like what I was finding myself drawn to for no particular reason, but maybe a reason, is today was all about trees, and it was about not sort of the beautiful green leafy spring trees, because they're not there yet. This particular trail I was on went through some highlands, and so many trees are like fallen over and knocked over and find their way into these amazing sort of geometric patterns, but fall just completely chaotically. That was one thing that I was noticing today and stopping to take pictures of. But then another one, and I don't want to get kind of too metaphysical here, but hey,
we're up for it.
If not here, then where?
Yeah, and maybe because I was also thinking kind of about speaking with you ladies and about creativity and about sort of this imperfect existence we all have, and how you have to accept your imperfections and your flaws in order to really be able to create in a way where you can let yourself out of your own boundaries, or where you're not as harsh a critic on yourself, when you can allow yourself the freedom to be imperfect. And I'll send you some of these pictures. Today was all about the way in which these giant, beautiful tree structures were just full of flaws. I mean, giant holes that you can see through in their lower trunks, and these like hacks out the side where you look and just say, how could something so strong and beautiful and inspiring be able to actually come out of a foundation that's just full of holes and cracks, and like it just shouldn't be. And so, and so not just sort of the symbolic part of, okay, so there's imperfections in everything that's beautiful, but also just seeing how these, like the different cracks and growths and weirdness that created these imperfections were in and of themselves these beautiful, like organic works of nature in and of themselves. Once I got that into my head, what should have been probably a 1 hour walk turned into 2, because I was stopping everywhere along the way taking pictures. Got myself a little bit lost. Blue trail, white trail, pink trail, kind of got a little bit mixed up. Even knowing that that's the eventual demise of everything. Some of the trees have fallen over, and you look and say, wow, you've been rotting for 30 years. You've been gone for that long. Yet there's still beauty to it. And even in the way in which it's decaying, has
What's
beauty.
left of you is even beautiful.
What's left of you. Yeah. And it made me think, I did the survey.
That precedes this interview. Yeah.
I did my homework.
Yes. Thank you.
There's a lot of questions in there. And towards the end, there's the one where you have to pick like the one of 5 types.
Yeah.
Meta Wagner's 5 creative types. Yeah.
And I mean, I kind of felt like I wanted to pick all of them, but it wouldn't let me.
Oh, interesting.
So what did you go for?
Yeah.
Well, I picked the first one, but it was really a combination with the third one. The first one was ego-driven, parentheses, not a bad thing.
Yes.
Yeah. An A-lister. You're an A-lister,
that
baby.
You want to be seen and noticed and cheered. But here's where it's a tough fit for me. And I feel like this is something that particularly creatives who are working not on stage, but creating the stage, so to speak, run into is, I don't want to be seen at all. I don't ever want to be seen. I don't want to be at the forefront, but I want my work to be seen.
But your work is world class. Your work is A-list.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that.
No, I'm
and
telling
that's
you.
subjective.
That's
okay.
nope.
Okay.
That's
It's
me.
fact.
Nope. I'm telling you. Your
Thank
work
you.
is A-list. So you were a combo platter of the A-list, which truly it's not a bad thing.
It's so interesting too, because your work creates A-listers of other people as well. I think I'm going to be that bold.
That's pretty bold. And again, I'll blush here. I guess the radio can't see me blushing, so I can blush all I want. But if I'm designing a performance, if I'm lighting a show, if the performer, the performance, the material, the music isn't already there, there's nothing I can do to get it there.
There's nothing you can do.
When it is there, there's hopefully a lot that I can do to elevate it, augment it, help to portray the story, maybe give it a more visceral impact in ways. But if the material is not there, we've seen beautiful movies that are not actually good stories, and it doesn't make it a good movie. Yeah,
that's correct.
But wait, before we go too far, you were partially an A-lister, and what was the other?
The third one, it was something
what
about
was the vibe?
Works
What's
of
the vibe? You're a game changer. This tracks. This tracks. You are a game changing A-lister. I would have bet money on that.
You're living your truth.
Yeah, this totally tracks.
So back to the walk in the woods for a moment. So it's not always walks in the woods. Sometimes I'll go for a run. I am slightly injured right now, so I'm not running as much. So I'm hiking more. It's basically the moments that I'm allowing myself to not be sort of bogged down in a task. I'll kind of take with me whatever various design problems there might be or inspiration I'm looking for. And it's brewing. It sort of automatically infuses the flavor into whatever it is I might be doing. And so sometimes if I find that I'm working on a design project where I'm trying to, come up with a kind of structural aesthetic piece, all of a sudden everywhere I go, all I'm seeing is structural aesthetic pieces in nature and in bricks. And
you're seeing trees that are, yeah.
I'm seeing trees that are at funny right angles, organic, and that's appealing to me. One place I find where this is kind of a sort of interesting inspiration that isn't necessarily something that's, feeling spiritual and connected with nature. Wandering through hotels, hotel lobbies, airports, there's the architecture of things is very inspiring into any sort of live or visual design I'm doing, and the lighting portion of things and how light is allowed into buildings or through structures. All of that finds its way into whatever inspiration I'm needing.
And on some level, like either at the surface of consciousness or even if it's running sort of back in the background, you have made a practice of that sort of seeking, it sounds like.
Yes. And I have this tarot, so, going all over the place, but I know that's, some of the conversations that happen here. And I think that creatives in general go through this is like, you have different fears, of course, in the process, in your creative processes. And one of my biggest ones is forgetting whatever it is that I'm seeing and feeling at the moment.
That's why you got to have a spark file. I mean, the spark file can be any container, right? Like absolutely.
For me, so absolutely. I take, what do you always have with you is pretty much your phone.
Yeah.
So pictures of things. And so I'll just, I'll randomly snap it because I know that at some later point I'm going to be going through and I'll say, oh, I took that because I felt like it might be inspiring for something. And so then I move photos that are specifically geared towards that into an album on my phone called Inspirational Images.
Yes. So you have a photo spark file.
I do. Yeah. And then there's another, I have like, various Pinterest pages, but usually what'll happen is, since the more sort of different sites I have to go to, the more I forget where stuff is. So I'll start screenshotting stuff from Pinterest or from the web, wherever it is, and I move it into that.
It lives in your phone.
So smart.
That's great.
Well, but it also lives on the cloud, which is a good thing because, I also have that fear that.
Because you will drop your phone in the toilet.
It could happen.
That's right.
It'll happen. But having it all in one place, we're big advocates of that because we've all had those like 17 files of notes and photos and articles and whatnot.
And then you make yourself crazy because you know that there was something that you saw 3 weeks ago.
Can you put your hands on it?
And you can't put your hands on it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh my God. Yeah. Absolutely.
Mark, before we go any further, we do have to request the SparkFile price of admission from you, which is, please share a creative risk that you have taken recently.
Oh, God. This is really tough because I know I gave you a little bit of a heads up that I had one. But I need to preface by saying I feel like every single creative endeavor, every design I work on, starts out as a risk.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a risk all the way to the end, but they're all risks. Some of them feel risky for longer. Some of them I can overcome the fear quicker.
Yeah.
Some of them are smaller risks. It's a little more, and I don't want to sort of create the impression here that I only work on projects that are really, groundbreaking, because they're not. Sometimes a lot of them aren't.
But you are a game changer.
But sometimes I just play the game as it is.
Okay. Yeah. You're like, don't reinvent the wheel here.
Right. Well, and there's, I've said this to, some of the producers that I work with on like different comedy specials, which is one of the main genres I'm in these days, that and concert production. You can hire me to light something that has a blue curtain. And if it fits in my schedule, great, let's do it. It'll be great to work with you on that. But there's a lot of people who can do a blue curtain and a spotlight.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily gravitate into those projects. When they come along, I will play the game, and I feel like I light a blue curtain very well, as do the people who hire me to do that. But the ones that I really want, the ones that I gravitate towards, are the ones that, I feel like I'm pushing towards the edge of a cliff and kicking some stuff over and seeing who I could bring with me. And
oh man,
and those are the scariest ones because it doesn't always work.
I'm so curious if the things that have given you the riskiest, maybe even extended feelings of creative risk are the things that I've seen your work, not known that's your work, and it has blown my butt off my body. And I rewatch. I just wonder if those things coincide, that the things that felt like the biggest risks from the inside are the things that have captivated our imagination and our attention.
Oh, well, I feel like I could totally answer that wrong.
You'd be like, I don't know, maybe.
You did ask for a specific one, and I'm gonna give you one. And I don't know if you've seen this or not seen it. It was a live web stream, so you can really only find it now if you go looking on YouTube, or if you happen to be a Fish fan and you have all of the different available Fish streaming services. This is the band Fish.
Yes.
Okay.
So I do not work for Fish. Fish has a long-standing lighting designer who has been with them for 30 years and has his own trademark for that band.
Wow.
And it's incredible, and it's its own thing.
Yeah.
But Trey Anastasio, who is the front man and one of the founders of that band, has brought me in on a lot of his side projects.
Yes.
Most of his solo and special projects since about 2012, I've had the good fortune to be involved with. During the pandemic closure, like the 2020, nothing's happening, no one's working, no one's doing shows, venues aren't open, you can't go out of your house, the whole
deep into the pandemic, those months.
Yeah. And it was this is about August when I hear from Trey, and this is the point where I feel like most of, like, for myself and most of my colleagues and most people in performance, people in design, anyone involved with something that requires an audience, had finally just accepted that there was no work, there was no FOMO, you're not missing out on anything.
Right.
Take this as your winter, so to speak, and just like do other things in your life because you'll never have this again. Right?
Yes.
So during that period, like into the spring, Trey had been working on something in his living room, which turned into an album, and he was doing, like, I think it was basically weekly drops of a new song. that he would also record and then debut on Facebook. And I thought it was really risky work on his part. He was working the camera by himself, and he was writing music and by himself, and maybe doing some collaborating, but it was all, he was performing it all right there and recording it. And it went pretty deep. Some of it was, I'd watch it. I was just like, I can't believe that was something he was just doing, it at his place in Manhattan. And so we were keeping in touch throughout. I would see something and I would just throw him a little hello text and tell him I thought it was great and keep going. And then I guess around July or so, June or July, I think he did a Jimmy Fallon performance of that material. And it was the first thing that they had a musician come to their stage and do, as opposed to what had become the norm at that point, which was remotes, living room performances, things that were not happening with audiences. And if you remember at the time, there was a lot of different and really innovative ways that people were performing and creating and getting work out there.
That's right.
So I, sent a message to Trey and said, so happy to see you on there. That was great. Amazing. Just you, a guitar, and an amp, which is, very minimalist for him. And he wrote me back almost immediately and said, where are you? I need to call you. And I was like, I'm in the same place I've been for a while. And
here I sit.
I'm in my sunroom. And so he called and we start talking. He's like, so I've been thinking about you and talking to Patrick, who's one of his managers. And he had this, he had this idea. He wanted to do some kind of stream or show or performance or something. And it was pretty vague. He knew he needed to get it out there. We didn't know what the restrictions would be, where we can do something like this, anything like that. But he said, we collaborate well visually. And I know you do a lot of work in, concert films and in, other TV, comedy stuff. And so I want you to collaborate with me and help figure out what this can be. Some of the caveats that went with that, he said to me, I can't do a couch performance. I already did the thing in my living room and it will break my heart if I have to play to an empty room. Like I can't set up and just play to a bunch of seats and pretend like they're full of people. I don't think the fans want that. I think people have had enough of that, and I need it to be different. And I need it to reach the people at home.
Change the game.
That was the beginning conversation. It would take me a few hours to go through every step of the way, and I don't want to. I'll forget details. But along the way, it started out, it was going to be very small. We thought we would do like a pre-record and maybe edit it together, something where we, grab the black box. In fact, I was looking into like MTS and was looking at, because all these places were shuttered, right? So it would be kind of easy to get a black box, put a couple of cameras in and some lighting and just kind of experiment. And it was, this is I think it was just about August by now we were having this conversation. There's a rather large team that kind of surrounds the Fish Camp and Trey. We didn't know at that point with COVID if we'd be able to bring anybody from anywhere, if it just had to be New York people.
Yeah.
So we just started kind of brainstorming on it a bit. I ended up getting into a chat with his tour manager, who became an executive producer on the project, Richard Glasgow. And he said, look, I'm tasked with finding a space. What do I need to find? And I said, look, we just need a room approximately this big. It doesn't need to have any it needs a roof that we could rig some lighting from. We need to be able to close it off. It needs to, have dimensions approximately like this. And he started like throwing out some names of theaters. And I said, look, if it's a theater, that's fine. Let's just, don't get one of those big, expensive New York places, because that's, this is going to, run over very quickly. There was also, I kind of forgot one of the major pushes behind doing this was anything that Trey raised financially through the web streaming or through sponsorship would go to a not-for-profit foundation called Divided Sky that he was founding in order to build adult treatment centers, drug treatment centers. He's recovering, and he felt like that was an important contribution that he can make. So going into a place that was going to cost us tons of money wasn't really going to make sense.
That's right. Just take from that.
And so I explained a few different things to Richard. I said, if you get a stage, you can get a theater, but just we're only going to use the stage. We don't need the seating. We don't want to see any of the seating. That's all. He said, all right, leave it with me. And I come back, and the first thing he says is, how about the Beacon?
It's a giant theater, so many seats.
Giant theater with a small stage, no less. It's a little bit deceiving, but the stage itself is very vaudeville sized.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, Richard, the stage isn't really that big. And and Local One. I mean, it's going to be
Yeah.
how I feel like it's off. He goes, don't worry about a thing. MSG is going to give it to us, and they're going to pay for the stagehands, or at least pay the base coat, and they're all in on the benefit. We've already worked it all out. So now you just need to, figure out how to make it look cool.
Wow.
So, okay, great. I mean, I'm ready. I'm like, cool. This sounds good. We get, back into conversations with Trey, and we talk about the first thing we get into is really talking about, like, who is the audience here, right? Because we can't have an audience. So that's great. What do we do without an audience? What are the things? Let's embrace these.
Yeah.
We'll never have this moment
The
again.
obstacle is the path. Yeah.
That's right. The obstacle is the way.
Yeah. Obstacle is the path. I love that. I went to the venue in September for a scout. First thing, it was the first time I was back in the city since beginning of pandemic. So that was spooky enough.
Yeah.
And I walked on stage, and I tell you, like, I was choking back tears. I wept. Like, the rush of emotion of just knowing that we were doing something, we were back into it and doing the thing. Because if you're in a creative field, it's highly likely that you derive a lot of your own sort of personal worth and self-worth and value out of the fact that you are in a creative field. And when you have no opportunity to do that, there's a number of different existential crises that go with it. So, crying in my mask, get over that. And then after going through a couple of weeks, I showed Trey all the photos, and I started doing some sketches and some 3D models and looking at things from different perspectives. And I saw like a photo, like a Jerry Seinfeld photo that I had come across, where Jerry's standing on stage facing the camera, and the background is the auditorium.
Yeah.
And it's just all the empty seats.
Right.
And all the beautiful architecture, but not everything, not the, gilded proscenium arch and stuff, but just, these really great, like, balcony front details and the ceiling details, the spire. And I thought, okay, perfect. Except that we're looking at a room full of empty seats.
Yeah.
But we're looking at a performer, we're looking at the room, the audience who only ever sits in those seats is now seeing a perspective they'd never see.
That's
and
right.
I locked into that. So rendered it out, and I took the idea to Trey, and he loved it. And I explained to him, and he said, well, what about all the empty seats? I said, we're going to fill them, but we're going to fill them with light. I'm going to get as many small lights as I can and just randomly play. I'm just going to fill it. And it's going to be something like the idea of maybe it's a bunch of people kind of looking in, all the souls at home, or maybe it's a constellation and starry night, or it could be anything we want it to be. You're not going to feel the emptiness of the room at all. It's all going to be behind you.
But it's also the totality. While Trey Anastasio may be having an experience where he is singing to a camera and a brick wall and a skeleton crew, he had to, when you rendered that out, he had to understand the power of that imagery and the story that it tells historically about this slice of time in our lives when those seats needed to be filled with, the lit souls of the viewers at home, because it couldn't be filled with the human people that would normally be there. That is a great, great creative risk. And I believe you when you say that there were times in that process when it really was sort of like, what are we going to do in this unprecedented time to work within the creative limitations that have been dictated by this pandemic?
And make it feel meaningful, not that you just had a bunch of limitations, but actually that you transformed it.
Right. That we were going to take it and we were going to come out the other side with something that could only be done in this time, and that we were fortunate to have this time to do it. Not that anybody would, want a global pandemic for any creative reasons at all, but that life doesn't give you the choice.
That you were able to make magic out of it. And this, by the way, you're officially admitted into the Spark File. That is a beautiful creative risk. And lighting design, production design, when it's done well, sometimes it can be seamless and almost invisible, and a real platform and a highlight for the artist's work. Marc, you do this amazing magic trick, and you did it with that Trey Anastasio project at the Beacon, where the artist is complete. There, you are completely highlighting, literally spotlighting the artist, And also, you are taking something that can be seamless, it can be invisible, it can be ephemeral, like lighting, light production design. And you are making, I hope you can hear me as you're listening through your earbuds, friends. Like, I am so emphatic about this. You make magic. It is crazy what you do with your production and your lighting design. And it elevates the work to this place where it's like, usually there's like an audible gasp that happens, and it's happened with me, your work over and over again. And then I just have to watch it again and again and again. There's no question baked into this. I'm just sharing my truth.
My heart is warm.
My heart is growing. I feel like you didn't get that memo that reads, good lighting design isn't noticed. That's how you can tell a good lighting design. I understand, like, there are times when that's applicable and you don't want the design to overshadow, what the story is. But you have, on many occasions that I think we could point to, found a way for the design to be so additive. It's certainly not noticeable, but it is another presence there. It is another character on stage, or it's another piece of the full puzzle that just amplifies and elevates everything.
You just have to take it. You just have to take it. Just sit there and take it.
Thank you for that. I'm taking it.
If we could describe the discomfort on Marc's face of just like, oh God, all these compliments.
So can I tell you this? So a note that I just took as you were saying that. So that's an interesting one with design, and especially with lighting, and especially lighting for concerts, which can be oftentimes, center of attention, even overpowering, even and even like I definitely have some shows where I come out of it, I'm like, I need to tone it down.
Do you?
There's this fine line, because you really don't want, I should say, I don't want the work itself to draw its own attention, because I think that draws attention away from the full product, which is a collaborative form. So that's one of the things that I find myself conflicting with a lot on every design is, is it too much? Is it too little? Am I saying, hey, look at me, or am I saying, oh, this, hey, look at us?
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to, if I can, I just a quick addendum back to the tray story, because there was this point. So we're moving forward with this design and the layout, and everyone's starting to kind of piece it together and realize why it's going to be special. And I remember having like sort of one last, like there's always in every design period, there's the point of no return where you actually really have to commit and execute, and there's no more iterating. And it's like, see you at the venue.
Pencils down.
Pencils down, exactly. And I remember I was sitting out on my front porch. It was a mid-September day, and I'm on the phone with Trey and Patrick, his manager, and he, we're like, all right, we're really gonna do this. Okay, we're gonna do this. And Trey says, it occurs to me. It just occurred to me. I've had all of the, I've done these interviews. I did a Rolling Stone interview, and I said specifically, I'm not going to play to an empty venue. And he said, fuck, man, here we are. We're just featuring an empty venue. Like, he said, Marc, what if it's just a big mistake?
So what I love, to pause you for just a moment, I just want to highlight the fact that you're talking about two very well-established, very respected artists conferring about, what if this fails? What if this sucks? What if I just said one thing and I'm going to take a big creative swing? I'm going to run directly to the center of that thing I just said I wasn't going to do. I love that. I just love for us and for our listeners that they're hearing that. I feel like people who continue to change the game, continue to be engaging in A-list creative work, it means that you are going to have those moments of real fear.
If you're doing it right.
If you're doing it right.
Yeah. There was a point there where the fact that he was confiding that in me also, and look, Trey and I had worked together for a long time, and I feel like we had done great work together, but it was never in this kind of way where something was kind of birthing and we were like, I feel like we were really leaning on, obviously he wasn't leaning on me for anything musical or anything like that, but as far as like how this thing was going to look and how it was going to portray and what the world is we were creating, And I said, we've been looking at this. We keep responding the same way. There's not a single time once we've put the lit renders in where we've looked at it or anyone else has looked at it and said, what the fuck are you doing or anything like that. And I said, the only way we're going to be able to move forward from this point is if you and I just agree together that we're taking this risk together. Like we're going down.
Yeah.
And if it crashes and burns, for one thing,
we're going to Thelma and Louise it together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And for a second thing, we're going to be at the Beacon for 8 to 10 weeks. If we do the first week and we're like, wow, what a fucking mistake, we will figure it out.
Fix it. Yeah. Go change course.
Yeah.
We will fix it. We will fix it together. We'll move the cameras. We'll flip it around. Hey, week 2, or facing forward, or we can do that. We have that within our means. But if we don't embrace this and do it now, we'll never have the opportunity again.
Amazing.
He was quiet for a minute, and Patrick didn't say a thing. He was just, and he knows Trey pretty well. He was just like, I'm going to see how this goes. And he goes, yeah, all right. Yeah, let's do it. I'm in with you. Let's do it.
I love it.
It's so true.
Yeah. And it worked.
It's so true. And the obstacle is the way is so true, because the way you approached it was not like an apologetic, sorry, we're here at this empty theater. Those seats would represent like a sadness, as opposed to the flipping it around.
At one point, I think in the first, he was talking to his audience in somewhere in the first show, and he kind of points behind him. And he goes, this is what I usually get to see. I'm looking out at you. Now you get to see me looking out at you.
What I see. Yeah.
And then it became, obviously, over the next, we got to really play around with it after that. And spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen the Beacon Jams. The last one, he walks out through the seats. And for the first time, you get really close and you see just how much structure and all this grip equipment and everything that's creating this kind of, ocean constellation of people. And he walks out into the lobby and he gets out there, this gorgeous rotunda of a lobby. And there's, 30 or 40 dancers all out there. There's a drum circle. There's just this huge, celebration. He walks through that. He dances with them for a bit. And then he walks out on the street underneath the marquee, takes a left, walks down, turns around the corner. He's gone.
Ah, beautiful. Marc, you know how to bring it home. You know how to end a show.
Yeah. Really, really, really well done.
And clearly you collaborate with people who do as well. I love that story.
That was a risk with a happy ending. Marc, we want to take it back. We want to go back in history just a little bit. Maybe it's like the origin story of the three of us and how did we end up here today. You and I first met when we were working at Blue Man Group. You and I think, both started in the same year, 1996, but you were in Boston, correct? And I was in New York.
Correct.
You eventually made your way to New York. I don't know what year that was.
The quick history, my quick chronology at Blue Man, 96, I started as the master electrician on the Boston show about 3 months after they opened.
Mm-hmm.
I was finishing my senior year at Boston University, so I was like...
One of the BU folks. We had a lot of BU. We had Emerson. We had crews from both.
I stayed at the Boston show until summer 97, and then became the assistant lighting designer for the Chicago show. And we got that. That was Matt McCarthy was the designer. We got that up and running and open. That fall, I think we did a big Leno, if you remember, with the live wire and stuff.
We did a big Tonight Show appearance. Yeah, we did.
Oh, then we came back, and remember they had just bought 3rd Street.
Yes.
And they, in order to keep their public occupancy or cabaret, whatever license they needed, there had to be a public performance. That's right. So we did the New Constellations, December of 97, shivering in that space with the Rats. Then I disappeared for a while. I went to Vegas, got with Brian Fed. We worked on Bellagio, on the O show, the installation of that.
Didn't you work on our first Vegas show in 2000? Yeah, that the whole live wire, the desert scape.
Because by summer 98, I came back and we did the 817 show, which
so
was
good.
All the workshopping.
That's
right. It was the original workshopping, the Shadows piece, the live wire piece.
That it was at one of those performances. I was married to a Blue Man at the time. One of my former husbands. And I remember sitting in that workshop and gasping at your work. That was one of the times when I literally gasped out loud. And Chris Wink, after the show, Chris Wink, one of the founders of Blue Man Group, said, I heard you audibly gasp. And in all truth,
did you tell him it was the lighting?
It was the lighting.
In all fairness, I feel very much like I was a member of the design team. I was a member of the design team. I was not the designer of record for those projects. Eventually became the associate designer.
Right, but you were very much a part of a collaborative team.
Very much part of a collaborative team.
If I'm correct, the thing that I specifically gasped at is your handiwork. So with all due respect to all the designers and all the people.
You're not getting out of this interview without a million more compliments, Marc Janowitz. Just be prepared.
Okay.
Oh, God.
And then I was in New York. 8/17/98 onwards. And by, 99, it was, we are doing this Vegas show, come be an associate designer on it. And I, got my little office at 3rd Street in that kind of weird loft area and stayed through. And then, kept growing. It was, I became a Blue Man Productions employee, lighting director. I was the associate designer for all the new projects and special events. And, kind of went through, we did the Complex. They brought Mark Brickman on board.
That's right.
Which was a sea change for everything, big sea change in my own career at the time.
I was going to say, because is that like when you segued a bit into concert lighting?
Yeah, well, the Complex was the first concert that I had been involved with in a designer way. I mean, I had been lighting bands since, high school.
Sure.
I mean, I used to drive around Boston when I was in college with 12 par cans in the trunk of my car and, just going into Harper's Ferry or the Rat or wherever I could, plugging them into the wall and flashy. But Brickman was like anyone who was into concert design he was an idol.
Mark Brickman, yeah.
Yeah, Mark Brickman. And Jenny Willink had asked me to put together a short list of who I thought would be good designers when they wanted to do a concert thing. And he was first on the list. And I knew I'd be assigned to him. So yeah, I basically got to name my mentor.
Wow.
Mark, you're so smart.
Yeah, because he came in and then we were basically joined at the hip for the next almost 3 years. And so what happened from there is when I left Blue Man, almost immediately started doing stuff with Brickman or stuff that Brickman would get called for but didn't want to do, or stuff that he was designing and needed a lighting director for. And that really launched my concert career. And, I really, really, really wanted to keep a foot in theater, and I did for a while.
Yeah.
But it eventually turned to a point where concerts and that kind of live event thing really took me over. And I was, I think I was doing about one theater show a year just for my heart.
Sure.
But it didn't do a whole lot for my wallet.
Sure. Absolutely.
And,
sure.
I want to give you one other kind of compliment. Despite all the compliments on your work, I just want to mention a few things that I remember about our time together at Blue Man. So we were working on, multiple shows at all times. And as the PR person, I was always bringing in TV crews or arranging for TV appearances. So despite the fact that we open in 3 days, Mark, we also need to switch over and light this Tonight Show appearance. I hope you don't mind. And so I would have to approach the tech table to speak to the designers and about things that I needed, whether it's like, just, can they plug into the soundboard, or, would you mind taking on another TV show in the midst of this show launch? And I have to admit, I would always have to muster my strength to approach that table, because there were a lot of personalities at that table and they were all very, very kind, but just had sort of like a tough shell with a soft center, so it took like a moment sometimes to like get to the soft center. So I always felt like, okay, all right, I need to go talk to these guys and make some requests. And everyone always eventually was gracious. But you, from the first moment, always kind, always approachable, always made yourself available to say, what is it that you need? What does the project need? You were always so great. And I always I'm sorry I put this burden on you, but I was like, I'll go to Mark first. This will be my strategy. I will go to Marc Janowitz first. Mark will be kind and gracious. And then Mark and I will ask subsequent designers for the things that we need from them. So you made my life so much better. And of course, once I knew you were on board, I knew all of those TV appearances would go off beautifully. But then a few years into working together at Blue Man, I started Bridge Club Productions and had a residence at a small theater called Manhattan Theater Source. And I came to you asking if you might consider lighting our very first show, which I believe was Shrinkage by Manny Iglesias, starring Susan Blackwell and myself.
What?
Yes, both Susan and I in that show, Jeffrey Dornbos, a few other people. And I asked you, and you blew my mind because you were like, sure, I'll do that. Actually, why don't I do all of your shows? Why don't I just become your resident lighting designer?
Man.
And I was like, what the fuck? Yes.
Lucky us.
Lucky us. And then and title of show was part of that.
Well, lucky me though, because I wanted to do as much creative work as possible. And here you are walking in saying, we're just going to do shows all the time in this great little black box. And it really, it hit right where I needed it to at the time.
Oh, well, you delivered for us like in such a big, big way. I think all of us felt immediate like elevation of quality of work that we're going to be able to do there with you on our team. This is just it's taken me years, but this is a very public thank you to say we appreciate you and your support of our early work. You even invested in title of show. I mean, you have really been, for this little pair right here, you have been there to support our work in so many ways. Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you for including me.
Oh my God. Our fucking pleasure.
Lucky us. Did I mention lucky us? Jumping forward, Laura, can I get into this?
Yes, of course.
Oh my God. I've been waiting for this moment.
If you thought you got compliments before, here we go.
So, humble beginnings, just three little noodles trying to make theater at the Manhattan Theater Source. What you have become and continue to evolve into. One of the reasons that I'm so excited to have you on the podcast is because I'm a big fan of Bo Burnham's, and I was watching Bo Burnham's Kanye rant, and I was the whole thing, the totality of the whole thing. I've recommended it. I've talked about it on this podcast. I've recommended it.
This was in Inside, or this was in Make Happy?
Make Happy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful piece. Like you were saying earlier, the foundation of the writing is, to my estimation, extremely strong. And then I just couldn't stop. I had no idea you were involved in it. I couldn't stop watching it because I felt like the emotional impact of it and the way that it all comes together, it's thrilling, it's gutting. I was just like, I can't tell you how many of our clients I've sent this to. I'm like, take a look at this, see if this inspires anything for this thing you're doing. I just love it so much. And then I did a little research to learn more about how he made that. And I was sort of like, Marc Janowitz. And Laura helped me piece it together that it was actually you. You were one of the geniuses behind this piece. So again, no question, just a declaration of my feelings for your work. But I'm just curious, with a piece like that, is that another example to our conversation earlier where there was a measure of risk involved and it's commensurate with the impact that it has? Or were you and Bo and the sound designer, were you like, oh, no, we got this? Like, talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay. So, gosh, I feel like I'm about to burst your bubble big time.
You're like, it's the easiest thing I've ever designed, kid.
No, it's not that, but I need to give credit where credit's due on this one. I was brought in to do Make Happy as what's commonly known as a broadcast designer.
Okay.
The scope of what that is can be a lot of things, but the specifics of it is a designer brought in to take a show that already exists and make it broadcast friendly, or make it broadcast friendly, or augment it and expand it and enhance it, make sure that what's captured is the best it could possibly be. And it was the first non-concert one that I was ever brought into. So it's the first comedy special I've worked on.
Yeah.
Bo had been touring for a number of months already, and most of the framework of what you saw creatively and the style of cueing and a lot of the sort of extreme visual stuff, that was him. He did that.
Great. Credit where credit's due. Love it.
Credit where credit's due. No, and he had a lighting director who was touring with him who helped program that.
Mm-hmm.
My involvement was, here's the bones of this thing, okay? Which I saw a video of it, or maybe, I don't remember, I think I saw a video of it, like they had taken a video a few months before I got hired, and I saw it and I thought, oh, this is incredible and will never look good on camera. Because it was so extreme, like the levels and the color and it was kind of all over the place, but it looked really cool live.
Well, that's interesting you say color, because I think of it almost as, this is probably not technically accurate, but almost like it's in a black and white or blue and white. Do you know what I mean? Like it's
yeah. Especially the part and the part that you were mentioning, the Kanye rant was very much in those tones.
Yeah.
But that kind of those extremes of color, the deep blues and that sort of thing on HD and 4K cameras it just tears apart. It leaves no image. So what was really fun and exciting for me on that was to take something. First of all, in a genre that I hadn't worked in.
Nice.
And I got involved. The director of photography on that was very open to collaborate. He was very cinematic. And I think he realized right from the start when we got involved that he didn't have to light it, which is what cinematographers usually do. He needed to talk to me about how he was going to shoot it so that I could adjust, augment, change, adapt as needed. And so what was exciting is that because I already knew what Beau's vision was, because there it was in his live show, it was like, okay, now you get to take something that's already been like sketched and colored in, and now you get to like make it into what will become the forever version that people get to see on TV.
Oh God, that's a great collaboration.
And the reason why I ended up on that project, and it's funny because I think it's important, especially for creative professionals, to understand that it's not, so much about how you end up getting your work is not necessarily based on what you've done before, but or like how creative you can be, but it has a lot to do also with like relationships and people and ways in which you've either wittingly or unwittingly branded yourself. Beau's thing definitely looked more like a concert, and his promoter's rep, because he had one promoter, I think it was AEG, Chris Scanlon, was touring with him, and he knew me, and he knew my concert work, and he knew my concert film work, and he had said to Beau early on, if you're going to shoot this we got to get this guy Marc involved. He's going to come in, and he's going to make it, where it needs to be. I don't know what those internal conversations were with Beau, but I do remember that the executive producer who was brought in, when she didn't see any like listing for me in IMDb, she said to Scanlon, "No way, no how. I'm not risking this whole thing on a guy who's never done a comedy special before."
Oh my God.
Wow.
And Scanlon said, "Hey, look, fine, bring in whoever you want, but we're also bringing in Marc, and there's only one budget, and we'll fight you for it."
Oh, wow.
And so she kind of looked it through. She and I had a conversation. She realized I wasn't a complete joke.
What a fruitful collaboration.
Yeah. And she said, "Fine, you can do it." And here's what's great about it is, so we got through it. We shot 2 shows in one day or 3 shows in 2 days, but it was at the Capitol Theater, which also being in my backyard, and I'd done a lot of shows at the Cap. So I was able to smooth over a lot of kind of language barriers between the genres. I think we wrapped on a Friday or Saturday. And by Sunday, Kathy, the producer, called me and said, "I've got another project I think you might be interested in."
First, an apology. And second, another project.
No apology was required, simply the offer. And it was Horace and Pete.
Wow. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. You know what I realized? We should probably tell our listeners a few things that we didn't mention up top, but so when you speak of these concerts, we're talking about My Morning Jacket, the Lumineers, Fun, so many others, the comedy specials, Chris Rock, Adam Sandler, Flight of the Conchords, Bo Burnham, as just mentioned, theater shows like Blue Man Group and Forbidden Broadway. We just realized everyone should know those things and many more things that you do. But is there something that we haven't mentioned that you don't often get asked about that you would also like to say, like, I'm really proud of this as well, and I'd like the opportunity to share that?
You mean as far as work goes, or like I'm really proud of the fact that I've got 2 amazing kids and an amazing wife?
That's great too, because building a life is a creative project as well. And we talk about that a lot. And so building the life you want.
And it's actually a big part of the creative process that we often forget. Like we get so wrapped up in what we're doing that you can really go, like if you're not careful, you'll go your whole career and forget to build a life around it.
Oh, man.
That is so true.
Saddest thing I've ever heard.
I think that's a great answer. We'll take it. Yeah. Or is there something coming up that you want us to like keep an eye out for?
There was an HBO Max special out called Trash White by Moses Storm.
Oh, yes, of course. That doesn't look like any other comedy special you've ever seen before.
It's it's really a one-man show. It should have, when we installed it at a theater in LA, I wish he could have just done an off-Broadway run of it. It should have just sat there. It was so sad to tear it apart. And that was another one where the artists themselves had a vision for what it was going to look like. I mean, he knew Moses wanted a white set, and he made a model with all the trash around it. That was it. When I said, well, maybe we can do some color. No, this is what it's going to be. I'm happy to work in sort of all sorts of different ways. And sometimes it's nice when somebody comes in there like, I have no idea. I just know I really like what, oddly angled streets look like. Come up with something cool. That's great. That's fun. I like that. But it's also when you're collaborating with someone who comes in and already has something for you to sink your teeth into, there's something really great to that too. It's some of the fear of like, what if I birth something from nothing and they don't like it? Like that, that fear is assuaged a bit, because you've got someone to kind of go in with you on it already.
I mean, that's kind of a beautiful combo platter, though, of having a creative life. Sometimes you're plucking something from your own imagination, and just from the jump, you're like, this is new and different, and I want to share it, and it feels really vulnerable. And then other times you're like, I hear and can visualize this explanation of a vision that another artist is sharing with me, and I can help them to make that a reality. And that's also equally exciting.
Right from the start, there's already a team forming out of it. And that was, for a lot of people involved, not the least of which Moses Storm, that was a huge passion project. I mean, it was, I know like from the producer's end, they were in way deeper than they expected to be, because it just, everything needed a lot of attention. And ultimately, the finished product was, like you said, something, it was like no other special out there. And, I was really proud of that work. A couple of artists I've worked with who you didn't mention in the list, but some stuff that really stands out for me, like my collaborations with Hassan Minhaj.
Yes.
Have allowed me to go places creatively that might not have been the case if it wasn't somebody like that. And, the first thing I did with him was Homecoming King, which was his Netflix special. And that was another one it was a one-man show that he'd already been developing for a long time. He had an idea. He knew that the video content needed to be a certain way. They'd been rehearsing it a certain way. So getting to jump in where it was like, here's the bones of this thing, and I know how to do the show. Now make it into the thing that it needs to be, using the things that you do to get it there.
Yeah.
The original idea was there'll be a screen up center. By the end, it was like these strips of screen all over, and angular pieces that were very much like 8-bit geometry combined with sort of a homage to his Indian background. There being an aesthetic through that. Because of that, I got to do Patriot Act, which was his series, his Netflix series.
That's right.
And that one, it was infographics at a massive scale. And, I'd never done a series. Like, I guess Horace and Pete was a series, but where, it was all the video screens and information, all of that was part of the set and lighting. And so to be able to kind of bring that sort of 360 vision to it with an artist who was really into it and really knew how to use it, and really like, I'd come in and I'd say, we're going to add this level to it, and there's going to be this strip, and how about a floor you can stand on and move around that has the He's like, I know exactly what to do with that.
Yes.
It was definitely a learning process for me, because New York Netflix series, not a genre on the process side that I understood at all.
new challenges.
Yeah.
But you're also describing just the beauty of like when talented people come together, they know what they know, they're willing to share what they know, and everyone's contributions elevate the whole thing. I mean, that's truly the magic. Those are those magical moments.
I'm also relishing the idea that our listeners are going to watch some of these pieces of entertainment either for the first time or again with fresh eyes, knowing that this artist has made this contribution to these collaborations.
Yes.
I love creatives just increasing their awareness of all the people and all the contributions that are made into a piece. So I'm also enjoying that.
I feel like I've been really fortunate in my path that I've gotten to work with a lot of people who embrace the notion of what if, and starting a conversation creatively, like, what if we did something like this? That's not really something we know how to do, but we'll get to it if we like the idea. And having people who will go down the rabbit hole with you, like a Hassan Minhaj or like a Bo Burnham or like a Trey Anastasio.
Willing to go, yeah.
I'll take a lot of it back to Blue Man because we were very fortunate there that the whole like sort of founding structure of that was a lot of what ifs and let's create now, figure out the budget later, which is not so easy really.
Yeah, which isn't how it always gets to work.
But it taught us, I think, and I think that there's a whole, when I say us, I mean that kind of like large extended family that has sort of experienced a bit of a creative diaspora now, because we're all over the place.
Yeah.
But we all came out of that with a different sense of what is possible and how to not be sort of penned in by established boundaries.
That is correct.
And taking that with us. And
game changer. That's right.
Yeah, well, we all changed the game on that one.
Well, I mean, Blue Man was probably one of the biggest game changers. It doesn't feel like it now at 30 years old, but at the time, it was a lot of people saying, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. Theaters don't do. Why would you do that?
Luckily, that it made an impression on me at a young enough age.
Yeah.
And then the mentorship with Mark Brickman, who was definitely we can do any,
that was a stroke of genius. Can we just say, if you like have in mind people, who would you get mentored from if you could? And if you ever have the opportunity to put your mentor right in your, in your sights, take it. Take it.
And to this day, we don't do a lot of work together, but we do enjoy a very close relationship. I mean,
good.
He still says that he's Mark Sr. because we spell our names the same, and will introduce me to people randomly as his son, which really stumped David Gilmour when he introduced me to Gilmour.
Wait a minute.
This is my son. Remember that night? And Gilmour's like, what? You don't have a son who's like in his, at the time, 30s. Now I'm much older.
I love that. I love that story, and I love that you're still close, and just how that whole transition happened for you and allowed you to really spread your wings. Listen, we have, in the interest of time, we've got to move to a question that we ask all of our guests. You may be familiar with it. You work really fucking hard. What's it all for?
I was not prepared for that. You didn't prepare
We
me
did
for
not.
that.
We did not. What's it all for? First thing that comes to mind.
I'm going to watch me skirt this question. There's too many answers because the base coat, what is all the work? Like right now, why do I work so hard? I have a life and a family, and I need to provide.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's
there's that part. And but I think if somehow my career had gone a different way and I was doing something that paid the bills differently, but I'd still need to find some sort of creative outlet.
I can think of one. What's it all for? Just listening to you share about these different projects you've worked on.
And then I can say yeah.
Okay, I'll say a hypothesis, and then you can either say that's on target or you can shoot it down. I feel like one of your what is it all fors is to create opportunities where you can sort of link arms with great creatives who are working at the top of their game and just Thelma and Louise into creative risk together.
Yeah, the creative companionship, so to speak.
Yeah. But taking big swings together and making really, making big, beautiful, sometimes really game-changing things together.
Susan, that helps me come up with this one. When I feel like something's, can't be done or shouldn't be done or hasn't been done, or it's one of the things I find, like if I go into a venue somewhere and we're trying to figure out what to do and somebody says, well, we just never done it that way. Boom. That's my spark. I'm like,
your oppositional defiance kicks in and you're like, yet.
It's more like, what's stopping us?
Right.
This could be anything. Let's make it something beautiful. Let's create something from nothing.
I love it. That's the game changer. Game changers rising to the surface here.
There's this moment like in the design process, I'll work in the computer a lot. I'll do sketches and it'll be, everything I see is like this big. But I know that in scale, I'm going to walk on a stage one day and it's going to be, 20 feet tall, 50 feet tall, 80 feet, whatever it is. And there's these moments of where I wow myself. And it's like the first time a design is like either on stage or in the scene shop when I see it full scale and I'm like, holy shit, like I can't believe they actually did it. Like someone actually had saw something that I came up with out of nothing or out of whatever, some crazy idea, some thing in life that I pulled out and said, let's make this.
You saw some trees piled up and you're like, I'm going to take this. This is something Lin-Manuel has said in our presence, which is you have to be moved first. I feel like you wow yourself and then we get wowed. Yeah.
That is a big metric for me in when I'm working on some, late night queuing a show, we're like, we're going to do a rock tour and you got to program 30 songs. And when do you do it? Overnight usually. And it'd be like, 2 or 3 in the morning, you've been working on a song for 2 hours and you come up with something and you just sit back and you're like, shit, that is awesome. I am wowed. I'm floored. If that works for me.
Yeah.
It's going to work for the audience. Like I'm the biggest critic of that work. If it can't move me, not going to move anyone else.
Listen to his voice. Listeners, you have to take this in. This is so fucking priceless. Marc Janowitz. Listen to this, like wow yourself and then wow the world.
And this one's going to, I know this is going to sound kind of, I feel like it sounds a little bit petty. It's this sort of self-aggrandizing thing again. But when the credits roll, and if you can get Netflix to actually stay past the 25 executive producers and just that the next one after that, which is design and then usually director photography, and like I see my name there, and I think about when I was a kid, I'd be watching comedy specials, and I would be like, "Who's that person?" I used to keep a log of like who the designers are, and I'm like, "That's me." And you know what? And my mom can see that, and my friends can see that, and if my dad, who's not with us anymore, but he would, he'd be very proud. And it was like, I actually did it. I made it.
You did it.
I did it.
And
I don't know exactly where the next job is coming from, and you never do. And I go through, massive periods of time where if I see this gap in my calendar, like I freak out, which I'm working on, because part of what I have to keep reminding myself is you may not know where it's coming from, but like keep putting your best work out there and keep, respecting the people around you and have a good kind of air around who you are with other people. And you're not going to be lagging for that long. And before you know it, you're going to have too much to do.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to take long walks in the woods to just clear your head enough to like get through a day.
That's right. Marc, you are living it. You're living the, like, being a good person, doing good work, being a great person, doing great work in the world. And that work is just going to beget work. It's just a pleasure to know you and a pleasure to get to work with you and to be your friend.
Thank you so much, Marc Janowitz.
Thanks for joining us on the Spark File.
Thanks for having me.
So that is it. This episode of the Spark File was made on the lands of the Lenape people, and we hope that it put another bunch of sparks in your file. Listen, if there's a spark you'd like us to explore, or if you've taken a spark and fanned it into a creative flame and you'd like to share that, email us at thesparkfile@gmail.com or submit it through our website, thesparkfile.com.
We will even happily take your feedback, but first, the price of admission. You need to share a creative risk that you have taken recently.
And be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe, rate, 5-star review it. If you like this podcast, share it with people you love. And if you didn't like it, I don't know, Marc, what do you say to your critics?
Well, just wait for the next one. It might be a little better.
So humble. The humility.
Oh, beautiful. If something tickles your fancy and gets your creative juices flowing, we are writing you a forever permission slip to make that thing. that's been knocking at your door. It's your turn to take a spark and fan it into a flame.
You know, you got to take it
and make it.
Bye. Bye,
Thanks,
Marc Janowitz. We love you.
Bye. Love, love, love.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.